Hello, everyone. We are in Mu 81 today. And today I have the privilege to introduce the star of the session, Gloria Coates, who I believe is in Munich. Munich. And I have some things to play for you of her music. Gloria was here last year, if some of you weren't here last year. And I tried not to repeat music that we did then. And it was a shorter segment of like 20 minutes, really, with 5 different composers. And we all thought after that, we need Gloria full time. So we planned it, way in advance in our second year. And I've been listening to a lot of your music, Gloria, to try to get a better understanding. And I have to admit something that you probably don't know or do know, but you're going to tell me, I hope, which is, and this is not the surprise I was telling you about, which is that when I got to know you in New York and you were taking photos of me, I hadn't heard your music. I mean, I just trusted that you were a brilliant composer, but I didn't know your music. And then now, of course, many years later, I have a sense of it and how people feel about it. And I've watched, your music getting published by Peters, and I've seen the performers of your music are, major orchestras. And at the same time, I have to tell you, I'm really enjoying your choice of vocalists. Do you have a choice of vocalists? Because they have a minimum vibrato. Something in my head screams out Elizabeth Schwarzkopf, and I don't know why. And I just think, I haven't always been that lucky, unless I find my, particular sopranos for particular reasons. Same as violin players. And you do that too. You tend to have a violin player that's kind of very, I think of a Norwegian person who's championing your stuff. So I'm talking a lot here.
English.
I'd love you to lift your chin up just a little bit, or maybe like pull the screen down a little bit. Like,
Okay.
there you go. Yeah, that's terrific. Thank you. And, let me turn it over to you for a few moments before I start, bringing up various categories of topics. So, Gloria, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
So, what do you have to say to that disclosure? The
Well,
first of many.
I thought we knew each other better. I think I knew cats of yours. That's true.
Cats of mine.
But I didn't talk much about my music. That's true.
Yeah.
I never do. So this is very hard for me because this whole talk is going to be off the top of my head. The top of my hat.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about glissandi for a moment. Most people think of glissandi as an ornament.
That's true, especially the Polish school. It was. I knew he's gone in heaven. Dr. Detlef Goyovi, and he was telling people that my glissandi were very different from the Polish school because theirs were very beautifully ornamental and mine were structures.
Well, you studied with Otto Luening and Cherpinin, and they're not known for glissandi.
No,
Where'd you get it from? What made you go into this idea that the constant drift, which, by the way, is metaphoric for where you live and how you lived your life, this drift, which, by the way, is downwards, the glissandi, or are they upwards, or they're mixed, or where did you get this impulse?
Well, it's very, very early. And I think it comes from overtones because I always was interested in using overtones. And somehow there's a connection in my
brain. Aren't they digital?
At the time that I did it, there was no digits. There was no digital anywhere. But you're right. I think.
Do you mean like
probably it's from George Gershwin? It's from Gershwin because of his and also I was a singer.
So wait, don't go so quickly. So you're going to say the clarinet in the opening of the Rhapsody in Blue,
right?
Going up,
very exciting. as a young person. So
And the
I
other,
think
and you were
that's
going to say
important.
now another example was also,
Oh, the other thing is this. If you're a singer, you can easily do things like glissandos. And I was, as a child, very experimental. All the time, I would keep my foot in the pedal for all my pieces and listen to overtones. And I would do different things with music. So it sort of went with me. But when I was around early 60s, I was studying in Louisiana, and we were to write a string quartet. So I wrote a string quartet, and I connected everything with glissandi, because they were structures. And when my teacher, who's also, all the people I'm talking about are in heaven, and I won't mention his name because he might be unhappy. But when he saw it, he said, "What's this?" And then I said, "A string quartet." And he said, "But what's all this?" And I said, "Those are glissandos." I don't know if I called him that at the time. I can't remember.
what would you call them? What would you call them if you didn't want to use an Italian word for ornament? What would you call them?
Slides, maybe, sliding. But I said they're structures. I said this was, I think it was a Passacaglia, some kind of Passacaglia. And then he said, "You can't write this." And I said, "Why not?" And that really upset me. I said, "Why not?" And he said, "You can't write it because it's," he said, "you," and I said, "As long as it exists, you can hear it. So why can't I write it?" I would start to argue with him. And he said, "Well, maybe you can." He said, "But you can write it, but no one's going to listen to it." And I said, and then I was really hurt. And then I said, "Well, I think I would." That was it. So that's how I started.
Can I make a suggestion? And of course, I don't think we've ever argued about anything. But can I make a suggestion? You're a painter as well, right?
Right.
You're just self-identified as a singer, but you're a painter.
Right.
Let's broaden it. And I was thinking about composers who were painters. I was thinking of Schoenberg and Varese and Carl Ruggles. Those are the ones that
Right.
come to mind. I don't know if there's any you would add to that list.
Oh, I'm sure John Cage. He didn't
Really?
paint, but he drew. It's graphic.
Okay, we put John Cage. So,
Also Captain Beefheart, Don Van Vliet.
okay,
He gave
George
up
W. Bush. George
Miles
W. Bush.
Davis. Miles
Okay,
Davis.
so we got a big list now.
There are many.
Miles Davis still. Haven't
and
seen
Paul
him.
Kanye
Gallagher.
West. Don't leave out Kanye West.
Oh, please.
He's quite a good painter.
Don't tell me what to leave out. Or not. Okay, thank you. So now that we've said that, may I make a suggestion? Which is when you make a stroke on a canvas, you're making a slide.
Exactly.
You could go up,
Sideways.
down, to the side.
Uh-huh.
And if you turn the brush, this is what I always thought was Schoenberg's idea. I wrote a paper on it actually years ago
Yeah.
that suggested that it was the paintbrush that gave the idea of serialism with the 48.
Maybe.
Yeah, because you've got the row,
Uh-huh.
then you've got retrograde.
Except it's so easy to paint compared to compose.
Okay, fine. We all do the easy route here as musicians. But to continue, then you could turn the brush,
That's true.
and then you have inversion, and then
Well,
you have retrograde
right.
inversion,
Right.
where you could pick it up and still put the brush at any point. I'm just saying that might have been what made you argue.
Subconsciously.
Yeah, it may have given you that intuitive determination, the logic.
Right.
I mean, how do you feel about that idea?
I think it's possible.
Okay.
I have an interview with the American Music Center from years ago, in which I have a painting. It's of a Looning's house. And I show the difference between the painting and the composing, and how much simpler it is, but also the directions and whatever. So there is a relationship, but the painting is very relaxing and the composing is not. It's very hard work.
Understood. I also am, aware of the cross-cultural aspect of Japanese calligraphy, where the brush has a counterpoint between the outer edges, and that you can follow that counterpoint almost musically.
That's interesting.
So just to take that deeper. Let's hear a piece. This is a work. It's the last movement of your string quartet number 5. It's a good one to start with because you can see people playing. A lot of your works are so back in time for us that we don't have visuals. You can't see the Stuttgart Orchestra play Symphony number 4, right? So, but in this case, it's really interesting to see the string quartet, how they navigate it. But just before we start this piece that you call the 5th dimension, tell us why.
Oh, I can tell you the titles of all my pieces have been changed many times. So this is also like it. I felt it because it goes in different directions, like in and out, and I feel that way about music often.
Okay, so here we go. I will share the screen. This is our move.
That sound is, Johnny, that sound is much, much too soft because it grows, and I kept it at the same dynamic, so it should be much
Yeah,
louder.
normally we tend to have to raise the volume on these things over
Uh-huh.
Zoom.
Anyway, what you were saying, this is an old painting, but you can see, I don't know, can you see it?
Oh yeah, of course.
It has all these sweeps in it, like Lasande.
But not lines,
In this one, yes,
circular lines.
right, but not up and down.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to be specific on that. How much, and of course that's so true that it builds up, and that's part of that's one of the things I want to talk to you about is some pieces. Let me say it this way: you're going for substance, you're going for a truth, you're taking risks. You want to get to a place that you don't know if you've ever been before, and you don't even know what to say about it because it's ineffable, and you don't even know if anybody else hears what you hear. Would that be safe?
Yeah, but you don't
Yeah.
care.
And so the beginning of pieces can often be like a preparation. I mean, you could tell yourself it's beautiful and you can love listening to it and you could appreciate the development, but like it kind of needs like a diving board. And so like it builds up and then it gets to a point that I don't know if it's a saturation point, but it gets to a point where all of a sudden you start to feel things. And I wonder if they're not necessarily what you're feeling because you might be reacting to what you're hearing. I mean, how much can you imagine as you're composing? And then how much are you surprised by what you hear after you compose? And then how much do you feel obligated to the performance?
Not at all. I only feel obligated to my truth. And I only hope that somebody can find it. If it gets across. But that's what's so frightening about premieres.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you, I have a certain way of composing. And I have now somewhat systemized it. And that is that the first two orchestra pieces I've written, I have certain, they're not, I don't use a scale, but rather I use a graphic design. And within the first two symphonies, the beginnings are there. And throughout my work, and I have like 18 symphonies, they change and evolve. So that I would say one of the designs, which is in the second symphony, which is a mirror canon, it keeps changing. And the final is in Symphony number 7, the development of it. And so it's different. And I can use these designs with notes so that any normal and usual musician can perform. Because these structures, or whatever they are, I notate them myself so that they are understandable within normal notation.
How would you say normal notation? So sharp and flat, or and let's say C sharp and D flat.
Everything that a child would play. Like in my Music and Open Strings was done by a group of 8, 9, 10-year-olds in New Jersey once. And they did the scordatura movement of retuning.
Mm-hmm.
So I can notate it. It looks rather simple the way I notate, but I do it so that it could be understood. But it doesn't look complicated by music. But it sounds complicated.
Okay. But let me ask you a very simple question. How is C sharp different than D flat?
Well, it depends how it's used.
How you use it. How do you use it?
Well, I just use it. It depends. Again, it depends on how it's used. Sometimes I'll use it if it's in a system, then I'll keep it as a flat if it's in a flat system. But if it's close to another note, I might do it differently. So it depends how it's used.
Okay. So do you ever think of the sharp, let's say the chromatic sharp as sharper, higher than the flat, or do you think of it as lower?
Again, it depends how it's used. If it's close to another note, then the sharp is higher than the flat. If the flat is flattening to another note, then it might be flatter. It depends.
So are you doing anything?
I know, excuse me, that there's one piece, an early piece for a singer I used, and I kept hearing a note sharper, and I kept it in, it's still in there. So there's only one note, and I heard it sharper.
Okay, so this is where I'm getting at. Have you ever come across something called dissonant counterpoint?
No, not as such.
Okay, thanks. That's important because that's an American Cowell, Seeger, Fine, Brandt, a number of people, Lou Harrison Cage would use it. It's this idea that you don't use counterpoint in the old way. You have leap to leap, and you have resolution by leap. And so it's like counter to counterpoint. So it's dissonant counterpoint. So then the sharp, if you wanted it to be sharper, might be more like Ives, how Ives would feel it. Ives would feel the flat flatter, while the dissonant counterpoint people would just shake up the notation to make you feel things differently than usual. Now, the big surprise I wanted to bring out is I think I may have found the first example of glissandi being used substantively and not ornamentally. And guess
Exactly,
who?
all of mine are. All of mine are.
All of yours are. Who's the first?
I am probably.
I got a surprise.
I don't know anybody else.
I have a surprise.
Probably Charles Ives, because he's the first for everything.
Yes. Yes. Charles Ives. And I'm going to show you now. Take a look. Hold on. Okay, everybody see this? This is the original. This is the earth-formed fragment, or Earth Alone, that appears 4 times in the Universe Symphony. It's a little shrunken, but that's his handwriting. You can see what really is lava coming down the slopes of a volcano to create the Earth. There's the word Earth, formed. And this is what it looks like cleaner. I'll make it a little larger.
Is this what you did?
This is the Universe Symphony.
Yeah, I know, but this is your.
Yeah, well, this is a finale input by Mark Jones. That's the name of the person who did it.
Oh, okay.
And you see these bassoon lines with glissandi on them I'm pointing to?
Right.
And that's really not different from what I got from here when it's larger and you can read it, okay? And it's a huge collection of notes. This is the chord. 16 notes. I think you could hear it. Hold on, let's see if it'll work. And so that is the first real example of written glissandi functionally being used, because it creates the dissonance of the lava coming out of the volcanoes as it settles into a final chord. That's the surprise. And I think that's 1911. So I think that might be earlier than you, and even earlier than Gershwin. But nobody ever saw it. Other examples of glissandi are much more ornamental, but not here.
Well, I think Gershwin's is ornamental.
Yes, Gershwin is ornamental, but not here. Because when you get all those chord, that big chord, this aggregate chord, that's what the dissonance is.
You're talking about Ives now.
Ives, yeah. The dissonance is created by the glissandi, because the chord of 16 notes is basically 3-limit JI, right? It's just intonation of the perfect fifth over and over. So that kind of bell-like, chime-like is the way people have been describing the sound, is marred, if I can use the negative, pejorative, of the glissandi, which basically, creates the
All those tones,
of
actually.
lava on Earth, right? The heat on the Earth and the creating Earth. So yeah, I mean, that's functional. That's not ornamental.
Now, what exactly of those two? The one that you showed, the Ives writing, right?
Yeah.
With all, he never straightened it out. You are the one who straightened that out, right? Who
Well,
brings-
it goes through different developments. So there's a fellow named John Mowtry, the famous conductor, who
Yes.
was a Yale librarian, and he basically put together something readable. And
right.
then
But
from
the
that,
original is the Ives that we saw.
yeah, I went back to the original, make sure there were
Right.
no errors. There were
Yeah.
errors. Yeah, there were errors. So I fixed the errors. And there were very obvious errors, and you fix them. It's not a big problem. But, the reason I bring it up in your interview is just to show you there's an American heritage of it. It would have been nice to know, wouldn't
Well,
it?
actually, I think American music is basically, well, to tell you the beginning of this is that I once had a talk with Harvey Sahlberg. I'm sure you know him.
Sure, I do. Yes.
And we were discussing 12-tone music. And he said that it was really a chain, that the ideal was a chain of the composer learns the 12-tone technique and they continue it in their own way.
Mhm.
And if sometimes they may even make a mistake. And that's good because it continues in a new way. Whereas that's not my idea at all. Mine is more American, which is experimental. It comes from the individual creates the music. And that's how Ives was, and that's how Cage was. That's really American, I think.
And it's also the substance thing, the substance over manner, the idea that you're going for a truth, the idea that you want to go for something deeper than anybody could tell you to do. And that when you actually go for it, nobody knows why, nobody understands it. And somehow it's only in your whole life that you were able to produce, that you got this stuff done. Ives couldn't do it. He couldn't get this stuff done in his own tuning. He could imagine it, but he couldn't get it done. And you got it done. Now, I heard this qua-qua-versal. Have you heard that? Qua-qua-versal?
Oh, what do you think of that word? Peter Shepard, who had that, I want to tell you, the string quartet is Peter Shepard Scarvett's string quartet. It's the Kreutzer quartet that we heard. And that's Peter Shepard. Well, he likes that word. And he said, that's my music. And I was I thought, oh no, that sounds like a funny thing. He's making fun of me.
I'm going to guess that nobody here knows what that word means.
I don't think
That's the good news. That's the good news, right, Gloria? Nobody knows what it means. So unless they just...
Well, it sounds like a duck. A duck, do they?
Sounds awful. I agree. It's qua-qua, by the way.
It's quack, quack.
Well, it means something, and this I heard it's Slanimsky who gave you this word.
Nicholas Limsky is the one.
You never met
Describe
him,
my
did you?
name. I met him and I interviewed him once
Okay.
in California.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about that because nobody knows about it.
Oh, about him. Oh, he's a
Even,
marvelous
yeah.
person. In fact, I can tell you he had a cat. Did you know that?
No.
And this cat was trained. And he said, look, he drinks himself out of the faucet. And so he had his cat, the cat jumped up and he put the water on. The cat was drinking out of it. So anyway, and I remember I didn't have a car. I had to be picked up and he had no food. So he got some, not ravioli, what's like ravioli, sort of a pasta out. So he ate that. But he's so funny.
Out of a can?
No. The real pasta.
Okay. Well, that's good. But
Like
I thought you'd talk about
those
his
kind of noodles.
I thought
that
you'd talk about his photographic memory.
Well, he lived very simply. I mean, I think his daughter is an artist,
Yes.
right?
Allegedly.
In New York or
She
something.
came to Odysseus, actually.
Ah, I never met her.
Okay. I didn't either.
He had a cuckoo clock. And when I interviewed him with
Sure wasn't a quay clock?
a quick clock. And while he was talking, it went cuckoo, cuckoo. It's in the interview.
See,
But
always
he's
descending,
very
huh?
bright, brilliant man.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get back to you. What's this Cette Blanc Agonie?
La Vierge de Vivace, La Belle Aujourd'hui. It's a it's a song.
It's a sonnet?
No. It's a Mallarmé poem by Mallarmé.
Mallarmé, okay. I mean, I noticed that, how could you not notice that you love Dickinson poems, but I
Yes.
couldn't find any. I know
Oh
you.
my heavens!
I know you
There's
said.
there's a CD out on it.
Oh yeah, CD didn't show up on YouTube. That's
Oh.
yeah. Sorry, CDs are not that common anymore.
I know.
I'm burdened with them.
If you go to, well, it doesn't matter. These two pieces were just recorded, but they're not on CD yet. The Paul Celan and the Mallarmé
Okay, so
with
this,
Ilan Volkov conducting.
well, I do
Chamber
have. I do have on Bandcamp an example of it.
Of whom?
Well, now I guess I'm going to pronounce it in French now. Cette Blanche Agonie.
Right, and that's Signe van Osten, right? Singer. She's German.
Let's see if it says on Bandcamp.
And the
it says-
Dresden, I think the Dresden New Music Ensemble.
Yeah, you'll have to tell us about it. It doesn't say very much at all. It's New World Records. It features.
Oh, it's on New World Records. Oh,
Yes.
that's
You
cool.
know, huh? Indian sounds. This piece, the Force for Peace and War. Wir tonen allein. Und
Turn in the line. That's the Paul Celan.
Yes.
It's
So,
one of the. He
All right, so
wrote
we're going to play two of those. Let's play two of
Okay.
those. And they also have your artwork, I believe, on the cover.
right.
And this time it is lines going down,
Oh yes.
but they're not necessarily one color.
It has to do with the a Leonardo quotation.
Okay. Do you want to tell us?
Well, it has to do with the balance of nature,
Okay.
which is really right now very descriptive of our day to day. It's that it has to do with that the world becomes heavily populated, and then something happens like wars, disease. What else is happening now? Whatever's happening, and the population goes down, and then it comes up again. But he said it keeps, in spite of the fact that it goes down, it keeps growing and growing. And finally, there will be nothing more to eat. The population will die out. Actually, the people will die out. And it will end with fire, the world. And he compares it to the human body, the world, the streams are the veins in the body, are the rivers, and the ocean is the heart. And at the end, the earth ends with fire, and the fire is the soul of man. So it's very beautiful. So that's what that painting is.
Okay, but this is now the painting, is it not specific to any of the pieces? It's a generic.
No, that piece, that Leonardo, isn't finished. I spent 12 years researching and I didn't finish it. 2 parts I did.
Okay. All right. So let's go to one of these pieces right now, and then we'll hear another one.
The Fonte di Rimini is part of Leonardo research.
Would you like me to play that one first?
Or whatever you want.
Okay, let's see what we got heading up our way. I don't have that one set up, but I can.
It may be called, I gave it another name probably on that CD.
Let's see. I have a fragment from Leonardo's notebooks, Fonte di Rimini.
Okay, that would be it.
Okay. All right. So we're going to go to that next. Here we go.
Sound is gone.
very sorry. I had to stop that by accident. It happened.
But you know what happens? There's the voices come in, and they sing this one is really about a fountain of Leonardo. It's Make Me a Harmony, like the fountains in Remini. And I looked for the fountain and nobody ever found it. So it must have been destroyed since Leonardo's time.
It's sort of a wonderful allegory of you're continually looking.
Yes. Actually, each piece I have has many stories around it.
Yeah, I mean, Leonardo has always been a fascination for everyone. I mean, the psychobiography of Schoenberg is one. The ideas of writing your diary backwards that has to face into a mirror to read.
Right.
you-
No, I
Did you
think
do
that
that?
was copyright. I had his manuscript in my hand in the British Museum. They don't allow it anymore. And it was all on black little, he used to keep around his waist. He had a notebook, and he'd write his little notes. Well, they're black with age now. So I was reading it with a mirror in the British Museum in a special room. But now you can't. And I thought, how amazing to hold this piece of paper in my hand. It's just incredible feeling.
Did you get vibes from it?
Yes, definitely.
And they went directly into your piece, right?
Right.
Well, that's about one of the best ways that it works. When that
And
happens.
actually, I had to get permission from the American embassy to get in there. Now they don't even do that.
American embassy.
Right. In England, it was at the British Museum.
Okay, and the American embassy had to give you permission?
Right.
Wow. Okay.
It was that special. But since then, it was somebody got in there and did some destruction in this part. So they have closed it. So you can't even get permission.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go back into a little bit about your music in terms of why Slonimsky slammed you with that name.
He didn't slam me. According to Peter Shepard, it's a beautiful name and it describes my music.
I know it
Peter
does.
Shepard,
I know, and I wanted you to say that though before I went any further. Okay, so let me see what I got here is in all directions, from or to a center.
Where did you find that?
You just have to go on the internet and put the word up and it comes right up.
Well, those days I must not like this.
No, we're in a new era here. So
That's right.
yeah, I mean, I can do research through the internet. It's incredible. All the, like Ive scores are all available on the internet for free. I mean, it's really amazing.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you do have this idea. I keep thinking of the criticisms versus the compliments. I always find that interesting. Like with Ives, it's either they love it or they say it doesn't sound like Ives.
Oh,
And I of course it doesn't sound like Ives because they never heard it before. And it's in his tuning, which they never heard before. So all the stuff they've heard out of tune is what they think is Ives. And, that's a shame. It's we'll leave it there. But in your case, I was thinking of a tuna, the cactus fruit of Mexico. This, cactus fruit, it's a little dangerous. At the outside, you can get, there's a prickly part to it, like you can cut yourself if you're not careful. Then you open it up, carefully, and the inside's absolutely delicious. But, when you're in the inside, it's not more delicious in one part of it than another part. It's like fully delicious. So when I think of, a piece, let's say like the string quartet we heard, and to a certain degree, all your pieces, I feel like I'm taking a delicious fruit. It may not be a fruit I've had before. It may not even be a fruit that's that delicious. Because you can put agony, you could put horror. You have put horror even in the symphony, right?
sometimes.
I mean, sometimes. So you admit, okay, that's cool. Because expression is the full. I want to say enchilada, but it's a fruit. So I can see how that could be bothersome for somebody because they're eating the fruit. So good, delicious. Oh, I love that fruit. I haven't had this fruit before. Tasty. Okay, it's still the same fruit. And some people are going to get like, it's the same fruit. But it's not because, of course, there's the building of the fruit as you eat more and more of the fruit, right? It probably is tastier in different ways throughout the fruit. It probably is tastier, maybe.
Well, you can also say that a scale, if you're using a scale all the time, it all sounds alike, right? You could say
Yes.
that. You could say that if you were somebody who didn't know about scales. You could say all of the music that we write sounds alike.
Right. We noticed this recently with something called irregular tuning or ephemera, where like you have each key is slightly different, even though it's just the same 12 notes.
Right.
But each key is going to sound like a totally different scale, just because you've reoriented your senses of what the tonic is. So there's that aspect, of course, not to mention re-listening. I mean, your music is very good for re-listening, I think, because you're going to hear new stuff. You're going to hear it differently, and your life experience is going to change how you listen to it also. I mean, I don't know if you agree with that.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, well, thank you. I mean, I don't want to say anything you don't agree with. Right? All right, so one of the things that you brought up in an interview, which I found fascinating, is that people hear differently. People listen differently.
Right.
And we've been talking about that in Mood. This has been like a buzz term for us. We've been really like focusing because I've been telling people directly, literally to their face, I don't listen the way you do. You don't listen the way I do. And there's Vitold. He and I have been watching this in action over the years now, over more than a year, how people are listening different. And it's not just like a question of acuity, right? It's not just this dimension. It's certainly this dimension. And what I liked about the fruit metaphor is that it's three-dimensional. And the scale's two-dimensional. So I was pushing it a little further to a third dimension when I did that. And can I play a little bit of that interview with you? I'd like to. Let me just set it up to make sure that it's ready to go.
What interview was that?
Well, let me just get this set up, and then I'll be able to tell you because I'm going to read it. Okay, here it is. It's actually ladies' first interview.
Oh, yes, Lynn Bechtold. Lynn Bechtold interviewed me.
Yes, you
You
say
know
that.
her?
I
That's
don't know her.
Dan Cooper's wife, her partner.
Of
Dan
Composers Concordance?
Yes,
Okay, in New York. Okay. Were you visiting in New York?
I was visiting in New York.
Okay.
I was going through New York to California.
And let me see. I have it at 7:13. I'm going to move it to 7:04, 7:07, because I don't want to miss anything. But it's where you start talking about it, and I'll take it to the end from that point. Okay?
I had jet lag.
Did you? Yeah, and listen, don't worry about the Zoom sound of the recordings. Zoom is going to actually mix it at the end.
Oh,
So the whole recording gets mixed. And so you never really know what the volume's going to be in the recording. And people really can just turn up a little bit.
right.
Yeah, it's common practice. I certainly do it all the time. Okay, and this is another reason why new music since COVID, where it has to start on the internet, really does well, like your piece just did, with a good, sharp beginning. The string quartet, you do have a little bounce on the first note, which is helpful. Music that starts so softly doesn't work. Unanswered questions is really difficult on the internet. Almost impossible, I think. So there's some music is going to work better on the internet. It's a fact.
Mm.
But anyway, these are some of the intricacies that I've come, Vittel, if you want to add anything, that's what I got. Anybody else wants to add anything? So here we go. This is the interview coming right up. And I'm going to keep the mute on. No mute so that we can interact over it if you like. Okay?
Okay.
We can talk over it. Okay, here we go.
Cycle that would take 30 years. And the overtones also play a role in my music. Now there's a whole movement in France in which they take the overtones and they measure them with electronic instruments. But there are some of us who didn't need those instruments, that we already heard them. I think that musicians hear differently. Some maybe hear more melodically, some hear I think those who hear overtones have a very sensitive feeling for pitch and intonation. Anyway, I certainly do, and I hear those overtones. So I would imagine others do too. And the curious thing is that we never know, we musicians, those of us who are musicians, I know, as a child certainly, and even as an adult, I am not aware of how another person hears. It may be that all of us hear a little differently. So I'm sure that in the future there might be a way of testing this. And just like all of us perhaps see differently, and the colors are different for all of us to some degree. And I would say an artist has a stronger feeling, a sense, maybe even a feeling of touch, that maybe the skin, or we really have thin skin. And there's the expression, he's thin-skinned or something. But the truth is, they tested mine, and it's the most thin skin you can get. So that there's a difficulty even in putting needles in my veins. And maybe this is true of many musicians. So that we have a different sense of hearing and maybe seeing and touching. Or at least many of us do.
Okay. All righty. So that brings up possible interaction with other people here. People may have something to say. Not that they have to admit what their threshold of sense is. This used to be a very threatening conversation for some people on the internet, this idea of who hears better, who can hear more accurately. Often composers, even of microtonal music, certainly if they're composing exclusively for synthesizer, you can easily assume, maybe correctly or incorrectly, that they can't hear everything as finely as you do. So, one of our classic examples came from Furman University, where we have the Microtonal Archive, where one of the faculty members admitted that he just doesn't hear more than like 22 cents. That's it. You can't hear him. It's finer than that. Doesn't mean he can't compose, and doesn't mean he can't teach it, obviously, because he's doing it. Joe Pearson is a dear friend of mine. He passed away. He did a lot of great work with me on the university and other things. He's a member of the board, and he didn't hear, I don't think, better than 6 cents, maybe 10 cents. And we used to argue about what a trombone player was going to do if he's in 72 equal. Is he going to play the pure fifth, or is he going to play the tempered fifth? You know what? We asked the player, who's now the chairman of ethnomusicology at Columbia University. He played the tempered fifth. Anyway, we do hear differently. Can I ask you, Gloria, do you hear the pure fifth, and do you prefer it over the tempered fifth, and you have a different tempered fifth here?
It depends again. It depends on what I'm doing it with.
Right. If you're moving quickly.
Sometimes I like the perfect fifth. It depends what the piece is.
So we were asking.
You have to be very flexible. Incidentally, with what we were talking about, I can go even further for composers in that I believe every person has different areas that he's better in. Like some are better at hearing, some are better at rhythm, some are better at melodies, and that you sometimes you're good in everything, but not most of the students. So they should, and even Cage was not good in certain areas, but he's special. He's took what he did well and he enlarged on it. And that's the whole thing, that people are very different.
That's very honest. I really appreciate the honesty of that statement. That's a much better way of putting it about Cage than we normally hear. I certainly know that Cage loved the idea of being considered a microtonalist. And he was probably very self-conscious about his so-called limitations, let alone criticisms from Schoenberg and others. Anyway, I found out that Cowell, Ives, and Schoenberg basically did, all three have the same definition of consonance and dissonance.
Of what?
Consonance and dissonance.
Oh.
Which is that they're all consonant. And for different reasons. And I know that when you talk to us, we hear about the dissonance in terms of the world. The world's experiences provide the dissonances. Music is what? Representing it, improving it, illuminating it, asking for reflection. How do you view it?
It all has to do with degree.
Okay, take us along, hold us by the hand and take us along the degrees.
Right. So again, it's the flexibility of how you're dealing with music. Is that if you have if you have a texture that's very consonant and suddenly put in something that's close together in sound, you will have more dissonance than if you have it all dissonant. That's the widest I can tell you.
Do you have, how much, let me try this question. What's the largest combination of pitches you've ever used?
Largest combination? Well, I can tell you that I have scores using 54 different sounds at once.
Do you mean inharmonic percussion as well in that 54?
Everything. Not
All right,
just
take the percussion out. Take the percussion out. How many now?
I'll show you the score.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
I can find one. Here. Wait. 7. Here. Yes.
I can see how big the score is. Wow.
The print is very tiny.
I believe.
Well, I don't know where this is in the score.
Is it possible you could just hold the score up and keep it still for just a moment?
I could, like this is a page.
Wow. So there's a lot of detail in there.
And you'll see Tisandi in there too.
And which piece is this?
This is symphony number 7,
Okay.
the last movement.
Okay. And so that's the composition of a fruit? I see my metaphor false. But it's not a meatloaf. It's not a 5-layer cake either. I mean, it's its own thing, and it's why it's humongous.
I don't know where this goes, but I think it's like that. Right, there are 3 movements, but the last movement is the most difficult. That's the reason. That is this piece is the reason that I have symphonies, because I used to just write pieces with names like Music on Open Strings or Illuminatio Tenebris, Chiaroscuro, and sometimes 2 names. And I got to this piece and it was so hard. It took so much concentration. And I thought I couldn't find a name for that piece. And I thought, and then I thought, maybe this is a symphony because it's so hard. So I called it Symphony number 1. And then I thought, well, what were those other pieces back there? And I went back and I took pieces that had several movements and were rather serious, and I called them symphonies. And this turned out to be Symphony Number 7. And I wasn't sure they were. And when CPO took 3 of the symphonies to record, they give the manuscripts to musicologists that are quite well known. And so they had my manuscripts with these symphonies on, and they gave to Dr. Schubert, who was head of the Hindemith Institute. And he called, he said, what, you've written 7, no, 7 was in there, right? 7 symphonies? And I said, and I couldn't say, I don't know. I just said, like, yes. Okay. And he wrote it in the program notes. That's what he was doing. He wrote that those were true symphonies. And he took Mahler as the basis, that the symphony and takes the whole world or something like Mahler's does. And so he said, these are certainly symphonies. So then I felt much better. But I was a bit worried about that. But it's because of this one that I have even symphonies.
Well, you know, it seems clear that you need a symphony to express yourself fully. And that's not an easy thing for young people today. Also, the idea of movements is not as in favor in some areas today.
Well, the thing is, too, that in school, you learn to write forms, I guess.
Right.
And mine were not any forms like you'd ever studied, because I write intuitively and always have since I was little. And that's why both Cherubin and Otto Luning, they never interfered with my music.
That's what I was thinking. I was just thinking, I knew Otto Luning well, actually.
Right.
I had interviewed him. He made me read his autobiography. He was pro-Parch. He wanted the bassoon sonata he wrote to have the bassoon play in just intonation to the piano. So he must have been, very open to harmonic overtones.
Right. I'm sure he was.
And he just stayed out of your way because he's
right.
And permission.
What he would say, right? What he would say is, "Oh, you don't have enough expression, fortes and pianissimos."
Oh, the dynamics.
Dynamics. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all he practiced.
All right, but I do want to ask you this. We didn't quite get. I really want to get to the nitty gritty. You had 54 different sounds. We take out the percussion. Yeah. There's going to be, let's say, 30 sounds. Let's not count them.
No, there aren't that many percussion.
No, without percussion. Oh, so more than 30. Okay, that's fine.
Like 45.
Like 40. Okay, I didn't want to pin you down to a number, but let's say 45. My question here is, how did you distinguish them on paper?
You had to concentrate on, well, first of all, the concentration was horrendous.
But what's the notation differences? How do you indicate the distinguishing notes? How do you distinguish them?
I'd have to look. I have no idea. I only know when I finish something, I try to forget it because it's so terrible.
Well, let's say if I just use sharps and flats and I made them different, there'd be 21 notes.
Oh, I did not use microtones that way.
How did you do it? That's what we want to know.
Oh, I have forms. Okay. I took these in this movement. I had a mirror cannon basically going on. But within the mirror cannon, I had movements going on. So these are glissandi, right? So that I might have sort of forms going here and here. And so they touch each other in different ways.
So it's graphic.
We could say, but I can also hear it.
Okay, I understand you can hear it, and I understand.
Very painful. This piece was very painful to write for me.
Okay, all right. So I understand you can hear it, and I understand that they played it. Now I want to understand, what did they see on the paper that helped them distinguish the different notes?
The notation, my notation.
Yeah.
And it was done finely, perfectly. It's been done 2 times, I think. But whenever they get to the last movement, they have never rehearsed it. They simply play it through. And for whatever reason, once it was sabotaged, by a bassoonist, sabotaged that last
That
movement.
always happens.
Can you believe it? A bassoonist. He somehow, so he wouldn't let him rehearse. This was a big orchestra. And the other time, there was an American composer who was upset with that movement, and he went out to the car. He was with the conductor, and he eventually sort of copied that movement. But the one time it was done beautifully was with the BBC in Scotland, and that was someone from an Israeli conductor named Ilan Volkov, who had heard the one on the CD, and he was the main conductor at the BBC Scotland, and he did it beautifully.
Okay,
It's
but
not on the CD.
I must be honest, I still don't have a picture
Oh,
of what, because either it's on the screen, I can't see it, or
okay.
I don't have a picture of what did the players see?
Okay, let me
What
show
does the
you.
conductor see that tells them I want this note?
They saw the notes.
But how do you indicate them?
Okay. I'll try to write it here.
Yeah, I don't mean to be obtuse. I just really want to understand.
Okay.
If you like, I can go to some other music while you do that.
Here. No.
Okay.
Okay.
This is exciting. This is the big moment.
But what I did is if I'm moving this glissando to here, and it takes
Hold it up to the screen. Hold it up to the screen.
if it takes 3 beats to do it, I'll put little feet up there, and I'll make them from where it goes to where, so that everything is notated.
All right. So some of the sounds are just are the spaces in the midst of a glissando.
Right? They're not supposed to land on this note, but they have to be there at the right time.
I hear you. So now I understand. Does that make sense to everybody? So when I heard the cellist in the string quartet, I heard the top note would be different each time.
Because he was going up. He was going up a microtone, quarter tone.
A quarter tone each time?
You heard that, right?
I heard that, yes. But that's not, you don't expect most people even to listen to that.
You can tell something's happening.
Right. Okay. All right, so that's delicious. I'm reminded of Percy Granger's use of free music with his.
Percy Granger. I will tell you a little story about him. I had a piano teacher once who said that she would go past his house at night sometimes, and he would be playing the piano in his birthday suit.
Yes, he was definitely had inclinations. Yeah,
with the curtains open.
Yeah, I don't want to compare notes with you on this one. But
No, but he was a wonderful composer.
yes,
When I was little, I was supposed to conduct country gardens. We loved it.
I played Handel in the Strand in high school. That became part of a TV show,
wow.
some alternative network. But I do want to ask you this: in the Percy Granger string quartet, where first it's this instrument that he invents, this weird contraption that predates the synthesizer.
I've never heard this. That's interesting.
Yeah, you can see a video of it. It's on YouTube.
Okay.
And then, basically then he arranges it for string quartet. I conducted this in a theremin festival. And what's interesting is he's got the microtones, which are up to quarter tone, I believe. I don't think he did eighth, in between the glissandos, so that you had movements within the glissando to these pitches. Are you doing something similar to that?
Yes, because I have different glissandos moving in different ways, right? In their own circles, in their own forms. So they cross each other sometimes.
Okay, new question. Symphony number 4.
4.
Yes, so that's with a C. I can't pronounce it.
Symphony number 4. Did you see it by Sam Haddad? On
Stuttgart, I believe.
Oh, great. Symphony number 4.
Yeah,
okay. Okay, this you can see.
Oh, yes.
Isn't that nice?
That's the new Peters edition. Wow.
It's brand new.
Wow. Very nice.
Sure.
All right. There's no question that the players are playing it. It's a little bit disconcerting that doing it without rehearsals.
Where?
You
Which
know.
one? That's
one-
number 7. They
Yeah.
really
I just wanted to get the name of the Fourth Symphony, how you pronounce it, and what it means.
chiaroscuro,
Okay.
light and
Thank you.
dark.
Light and dark. Okay.
But that's the 4th. That's
Okay.
not-
Thank you. Okay. And when I listened to it, I heard a violin that was so tonal, that was alone, no orchestra. I mean, in the first time. Later, he comes back with something more, maybe like your First Symphony in terms of the way it's shaped. But did you identify with the violin? I'm wondering to what degree you identify with a particular part of a piece that you write. Do you put yourself into it?
Yes, this piece, Symphony number 4, if you're talking about it,
Yes.
you sure?
Yes.
It is dedicated. I think it's in here. Yes. Okay. This has to do with a metaphysical experience. This is my most metaphysical piece. If you want to hear about it. And it has to do with the death of my father, actually. I had visited him in America, come back to Germany. He was very ill. And I had called to see how he was. And my mother said he's fine. And I couldn't sleep that night. And so I was pacing the floor and I started getting a strange feeling, as if just a strange feeling is all I can say. And I started to cry. And I was listening to the radio and they were playing Leopold Stokowski's When I'm Laid in Earth on the radio. And I cried and cried to that music. And then I stopped and everything was light. The whole room seemed like it was light. And I wasn't sad anymore. So I can hardly tell you this without crying. But anyway, about 4 hours later, my mother called and he had died exactly at that time. And what happened is I could not compose for a while, maybe a year. And when I could, I decided somehow to write that. And the first thing I had sung When I'm Laid in Earth. When I'm Laid in Earth from Dino and Aeneas, it's a Passacaglia. So I use the Passacaglia theme, which in the first movement, which goes, I use it in different ways throughout. And on top of it, I use things that happened to me around the time of his death. And I take these events and I turn them into music so that sometimes there's glissandi there, but those events are there. And the second movement is composed of difficult things that happened in the family after he died. It's sort of percussive. And the last movement is a dream I had called Dream Sequence. And there I use, in the background, I use the mirror canon in glissandi because it is, the dream is I'm going up a great highway. And I have also painted the last movement. It's a huge painting in the other room. And I'm going up a great highway in a car with like maybe 40 lanes highway. And I'm going to my family's home. And that is illustrated. And I stop off at one point and I'm left there alone in this little island. And my brother, sister, and mother keep going. And then I see my his partner that he had. And she had died already, but she picks me up and I go, and this is all the last movement. And I finally get to my house and my brother says, Dad's on the telephone, wants to talk to you. And I see, and this is illustrated, my mother and my sister are crying. And that's also in there. And then he says, can you get here? Can you come up here? He said, I'll pick you up if you get to Rhinelander. And I know I couldn't get there somehow. I didn't have a car. And then all at once I see his friend come in, and he's lying with a pinstripe suit on, got across a desk. She puts up his hand and she says, he is dead, he is dead. So that's the piece.
With
Isn't
your
it
permission,
wild?
it is wild. With your permission, I'm going to now play that last movement of that symphony.
Right.
Okay.
You have
Don't
it
say
there.
anything. We're going to turn it up. Don't say anything though,
Okay.
so we don't get any, break in it. And please, everybody, mute. And here we go. We'll talk at the other end. Wow. More powerful with this story, Gloria.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know if that changes the way people listen to it.
I don't want to be.
Oh,
No,
it really did.
Really, did Vital?
Yeah, it really did. Incredible.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, you don't need to hear any story to any piece of music, you know. And the third hand, if we had three hands, there would be the title to influence us. I couldn't even pronounce it.
and really, it's just the title.
Just the title.
Yep.
May I ask what you called it before that title? If there was an
Or
earlier?
a Curious Girl.
Yeah, was it earlier?
I think that's what I may have called it first. I have to look it up. I can't remember.
What does that mean?
It's just light and dark. That's all.
Yeah, you had said that earlier. I just needed to hear that again. Light and dark. And was it light by itself versus dark by itself, or was it always light and dark together?
Light and dark together.
Okay.
Because even at every time there's light, there's dark. And it's like that. Yeah, it's like the time that light came at the beginning, the first movement, but the light was all around.
Right, illumination.
The darkness, right. And that's analyzed in detail beautifully on the internet.
I would
Somebody
like to
from
open this-
Colombia.
I'd like to
Sure.
open this up to anybody here. Marcelo's from Colombia. I don't know if that'll help, but anybody here would like to ask a question of Gloria's or make a comment as we're reaching the end of our session.
Right.
It's quiet. I usually
Hi,
said a lot.
here we go. Hi, Gloria.
Hi.
Beautiful work, all of it. I wanted to get your take on, it seems to me that you are, that the composing function in your life is a way of processing your life.
Right. Because
Same
I've
with
never,
the artistic.
I never even had a website. I still don't have a website. Someone put one out for some years, someone from Holland, because I think Skaya didn't have one and I didn't have one, but I've never had time. And I guess part of it is my music's very private, personal, and somehow and that's why I only got a publisher now, and they came to me, so I didn't even
Wow.
try. So it's a different way of looking at music, I guess.
Do you find that the having agency with the microtones enables you to more effectively do that?
That having a what?
Having agency with microtones,
Well, agency is what
Yeah.
you mean.
yeah, enables you to process your life better.
Oh. Oh, I don't know if I'm processing it actually,
Uh,
but I can tell you that using microtones is very natural for me. So that it gets closer. That's right. Okay, it works. It gets closer to what I'm trying to say.
mhm. Mm.
Is there any piece of yours that actually captured completely what you wanted to say? Or is it always
That
just
one's
getting
pretty
close?
close. They
That
get
was
they get close. They get close. Number 7 gets close. Number 1 gets close. They get close, but I can always do them again. And when I started out, I would, like with string quartets, I would have 4 or 5 versions of the same string quartet because I kept thinking I could do this better. But now I look at it, and the first one just as legitimate as the 4th one.
Another very common Ivesian connection, if you don't mind my saying that. And it's not just because of my own work, it's because you're an American, you know, whether you like it or not, who's in Germany.
Right. Very different.
Yeah, and that's, I guess for you, that's more of a glissandi relationship.
Well, actually, I'm happy here because I have a lot of privacy. So that's part of, like, nobody comes to your door. They always make an appointment. It's very quiet. They keep the outside noise even within the apartment building. So you can sort of be very alone, but because you have to kind of do what I'm doing. And yet one gets lonely too, like this. But at least I have Facebook.
Right. Things have changed.
And a few friends here too, right?
Hey, you have a lot. Look right now. There's 16
Right.
people here with you, 15 with you.
Right.
So, do you find a like-mindedness of microtonalists around the world?
Well, I'm not aware, but I know. Yes, what's happened is when my microtones were not necessarily accepted by the clique, the core, because they were still kind of doing an after echo of atonal music, I would say. And now they're starting to do microtonal. It's like I'm accepted. And maybe that's because of Peters. They said, oh, she's okay.
Well, I just had a funny thought that for any pure quarter tonalist, you would be a disfiguring element. There are such beings, it turns out, these pure-blooded quarter tonalists that really see that as the way.
But actually, I would say that if you do too many divisions, which some people do, I think that kind of gets blurred. I think sometimes, because I listen, I notate what I hear inside of me. And there are some people notate first, and then they try to hear it. But mine is from here first.
Well, trying to hear it the way you hear it, I'm thinking of the overtone series in the higher levels. If you go up and down them, like if they were tuned to a multitude of harp strings,
And microtones.
you get a blur. And
Right,
that blur would be a glissando.
Oh, also, but you get all those microtones up there anyway.
True. I was just looking for the connection to the glissando.
Oh, right. No,
it's
because the glissando is just full. It's all microtone, actually.
I know, but I'm still trying to we talk about listening differently. I keep thinking of overtones as digital in the sense that there's space between them.
Right.
And when you do a glissando, there's supposedly no space.
Right.
I mean, you could have somebody.
They're related. They're still related.
They are related. I'm looking for that relationship right now.
Okay.
When you mixed one player to another, you have them meet at a certain point in their glissandi. Is that true?
Yes, they can, but yes.
That's what I was thinking. That would make that would be part of your construction.
Not necessarily, but they can. They have to meet. There's certain things where they have to meet because of the rhythm, because it's exact notation.
Are there any other composers now working similarly to you, maybe under your influence?
Oh, there have been. I think that's why I started using, when I started hearing so many people, because I had them recorded. The performances were always recorded, and then Knox's had it. So a lot of them, but they didn't know how I was notating usually, because I didn't have a publisher. But they would take the sounds.
I got to say, in a way, you got a lucky break with people telling you had symphonies, because symphonies are like a fetish, in Europe, I guess.
But there's somebody who is very famous who died recently, named Dr. Ludwig Fincher, and he's the one who was the editor of MGG, Musikgeschichte in Gegenwart, the big rose of Germany. And he wrote a whole book on a symphony. And some of the American composers, then at the end of it, he has every country. And he ends with the United States. It's alphabetized somehow. And some of the people, or some of the works that we would, if they call them symphonies, he'll say these are not symphonies. So he has his own, I think even Philip Glass, there was something he called this, he said, this is not a real symphony, this is a, whatever it was. And he ends it with mine, saying at the end of the whole book is that I have rekindled the symphony in America with something even nicer. But that's kind of, so that makes me feel that whatever those are, that they are true symphonies.
I mean, symphony could be in the most general sense, you know, sounds that sound good together, and then for multiple forces, you know, and then for extended length. I mean, these are the things I would add to a definition. I see Marcelo shaking his head, yes, that makes sense, academically speaking.
No, well, just thinking about Stravinsky, yes, since the Symphony for Wind Instruments, the idea of similar to the idea of sonata, that is the initially just music that sounds, yes.
Yes, sonatas just
Instead of a form, and the symphony will be exactly this, something similar to a sonata in terms of sound, yes, but in a more probably orgiastic way, yes.
Yes.
And I will say that the Universe Symphony is also that, yes.
Yes, without movements. In other words, none of these definitions are required. It's just having, like, I guess 3 out of 4 or 5.
I think that in Germany, because that was the home of the symphony, I guess, that they think of content a lot.
In Germany, there's Musikkultur. Is that something that you are familiar with?
Well, I guess it's actually history.
Yes, you made it into a music.
And they're very, like the musicologists that I've known are very, I mean, they're almost like doctors. I mean, physicians, that they're so serious.
Yes, they are serious. This much I will agree.
Very, and they're very knowledgeable too. It's amazing.
Now we're stepping on toes.
Well,
anybody else?
They are even with microtones, if you get a good one.
If you get a good one,
for microtones, you have to get somebody who's into microtones.
Well, so you're thinking of Roman Brotbeck, aren't you?
No, I'm thinking of Giselher Schubert.
Okay, yes, all right. But you did work with Brotbeck in Switzerland, I believe.
With whom?
Roman Brotbeck?
No, I don't know him.
Oh, I thought I saw his name in connection with you.
Maybe.
He's a microtonal musicologist, so there are some.
Oh, really?
Yes. He would be familiar with your work for sure.
Well, a lot of people I don't know, because I stay in my apartment and I really don't know. And people say they know me or my music. They don't know me, but they know my music.
Well, the music does live on its own, doesn't it? Even abstractly, independently of who wrote it and what it's about.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Even with lives.
Oh, so true. No, that's the similarity that I was seeing. I guess if I can, I'd like to bring up one other question, because people are quiet, they've been listening, and they're a certain large group here. So I would say, I want to ask you about this. Between our ears are 2 hemispheres. One right, one left. The space between them, they call it the corpus callosum. It's bigger in women than men, but bigger in homosexual men than women. And with that's based on AIDS discoveries, since AIDS. When you think of a larger corpus callosum, I'm doing that as who I am. I'm thinking about the 2 hemispheres working more in tandem than alternating back and forth. This is sort of a male model I think it's once every 4 seconds. No, 4 times a second. There's a movement back and forth between the hemispheres. And in a I'm just being very general here. And in a female model, it would be more of the two hemispheres working in tandem together.
I agree.
You agree? And
I agree.
I was hoping you would, because I hear it in your music. I hear it in your music, and I hear it in terms of what people saying about your music. And when you say that people listen differently, that's part of it.
Uh-huh.
So that's fascinating. I've also been thinking of the harmonic series as right hemisphere, as being one chord that is out of time. And then the left hemisphere would be melody, narration, talking, constant movement, moving forward. And then, of course, these two integrated together is temperament. But otherwise, the left one by itself is the spiral of fifths. And they are between our ears. So that's something I just wanted to throw out there. What do you think?
Incidentally, I had a time when I took dictation in school, because I would hear all those different tones and different things, all kinds of things. So I would write down all these different things I was hearing. So I think that's true.
Yeah, that's a big, important discussion out here as well. We call that ephemera. And, that's a big part of our interest in music, is getting that to happen. But not everybody hears it.
Well, it can be a disadvantage.
How so?
Well, if you're in a class and you can't differentiate what she's playing and all these other tones that are going on. That's how strong they were.
That reminds me of my marine biology high school teacher who was colorblind. And like he would go into the class thinking he knew which colors were on the map, but every once in a while he'd make a mistake. And the class would have to point it out to him. But that's what you're saying. And I understand. Thank you so much, Gloria. I hope you had a good time here.
Thank you. It's interesting. I learned something from you.
Well, sometimes it's a byproduct. Thank you.
I'll be interested in your new book that just came out.
Yes.
I have to read it now.
Yeah, it didn't come out, so don't think it came out. This is just a
Well, it
manuscript.
came out in my computer.
I know. I sent it to you. I thought, it might be friendly of me to send it to you in advance of you being here, but I didn't expect you to read it.
I couldn't read it.
No, and it's okay. Although you could try to use this program where you can get it to speak aloud, so you don't have to read it.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Right click with your mouse if you're in, any kind of Word, and right click with your mouse, and it'll be on the menu. Speak loud.
Wow.
Speak loud, and then you put the mouse where you want it to start, and it'll talk to you.
Super.
Yeah.
With
It's
your
fun.
voice.
No, it's going to be a mechanical voice. I can't.
Wouldn't it be great to have your voice, though?
Well, that's not available at the moment. But what I just did this last couple of days is a new thing I just learned about from Michael Vick, which is instead of going to Bandcamp to give a link, I now can use Audacity to give me a small file that I can then put right into the Word file. So you just double click the Word file link. It's always going to start FRAG as a fragment. And it'll give you the chord I just talked about.
Wow.
Or the series of chords, so that nobody can hear. And as the last thing, because there's so much always to say to you, Gloria. So as the last thing, you can posit a pure fifth in your head, in your mind. I can do it. It's less than 1% of the planet, isn't it? It's less than 1% of the planet that can hear a pure fifth in their head, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's tiny. I bet it's a fraction of a fraction. What do you think, Joel? You're muted, of course.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay. I didn't say you were sure. I'm just asking.
I mean, like I hear,
You've been around the block. We've all done market research without getting paid for it. Yeah, I suspect that I've been talking to like 5 people. Sometimes, when I'm writing and I'm trying to figure out how to write for a larger group. I know Marcelo's reading it and I know he's got questions and I hope you tell me what they are so that I can, reach a larger audience. I know
will.
that, but just double clicking is going to get you the sound, which wasn't even available until modern, it's really recent. I think a year now, or 2 years, something like that. Someone will tell me when it happened, I'm sure soon. So anyway, these are different thoughts. Gloria, you want to say something?
Yes, thank you for having me. And thank you for listening.
It's
Thank
a great pleasure.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you.
Gloria, thank you so much. I didn't know about your music. It's fantastic, and I will listen to a lot more.
And that's an encouragement, is that
Thank
we only could play a little bit of her music. There's a lot of it. You want to hear it in context. You heard the last movement of number 4. How about the first 3? Right? What led to that is probably important. And then, of course, Gloria, there may be some of that beginning to get to the end.
But the beginning, that is all analyzed beautifully on the internet.
Okay. And if I don't think you could put it into the chat, but if you get it to me, we can give it to other people to find it.
The first movement.
Oh, just the first moment, the illumination?
Well, I mean, that's analyzed at Columbia University by
Where though?
a student. It's on the internet by Haddad, Sam Haddad. I think Sam Haddad, Haddad.
That's going to be helpful because I couldn't find it. I didn't see it.
Really? Okay. Oh,
Okay.
you would like it. Let me,
Yeah, if you just send me an email or something, I'll give it to everyone and they'll have it.
wait a second. I'm trying to find.
Because
And
for someone
also
to
link it
analyze,
here in the chat if you have it.
yeah, if you have it, you can put it in the chat. It's the ideal place.
Okay. Let's see if I can see it. SAAD and then HADDAD. That's his name. Saad Haddad. And put Saad Haddad and Gloria Coates. And you should find it.
Okay. Nobody's doing it now, so we'll have to do it later.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Right.
I'll
Thank you.
send you a recording so you'll have a copy.
Right.
Raj,
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you,
Thank
Gloria.
you.
Thank you.
Gloria.
Thank you.